I think we're live now.
I think we are. You're right. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Linda Abraham. I'm the president and founder of Accepted. I'm joined today by senior consultant Esmeralda Cardenal. She's a former admissions director at Michigan Broad, was an admissions director, associate admissions director, I believe, at Yale SOM, also consulted with several British top MBA programs along the way before joining Accepted several years ago. I think it's about 6 years now, right? So highly experienced MBA admissions consultant and MBA insider. We're also joined by Vikash, Fabliha, and Jenna, and we're going to be evaluating their profiles that have been sent over, and I believe will be shared also on the screen. So Esmeralda, I think you're going to start with Fabliha, so go ahead.
Yeah, great, Fabliha. So nice to meet you. Nice to meet everybody. Hello. Anyway, so Fabliha, can everybody see the profile? There you go. So she's a female Canadian with 5 years of work experience in marketing, currently working as a product marketing manager. Her undergraduate was a bachelor's BCom, a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing at Concordia with a GPA of 3.5 and a certification of international exchange from SMU Singapore. Her GMAT is 670 with a quant of 42 and a verbal of 40. And post-MBA, she wants to transition to a non-technical product manager like the Amazons, I'm assuming Amazons, Googles, etc. I'm assuming that's what you meant. A PM role from a current role as a transition into a PM from her current role of product marketing manager. Currently work in a medium-sized software company where I manage all marketing activities for my product, SAS cloud-based solution. Target MBA programs are NCEAD, McGill, and Cambridge Judge. So, Fabliha, what I think is you have really good profile. So what I usually do with our clients coming through Accepted is I try to, we give the pluses, the minuses, the things that, are not, maybe a little bit of a weakness or maybe just things to work on. And then what I think you should focus on in your application. And then at the end, I'm going to give you maybe some recommendations for maybe other schools that you should consider and add to your list. Okay. So in terms of positives, what I found is definitely almost 3 years of solid work experience at a very well-known company, software company that is very good, that is going to really help you kind of set the stage in terms of your goals, in terms of who you are and what you have accomplished. So that's great. The fact that you were promoted along the way, that is also good because, you can see the progression in the leadership that you've acquired, okay? The minuses, I see, you said that you had 3.5, so a GPA is not a minus. Your GMAT is a little bit on the low side. It would be better if that quant was a little bit higher, definitely. And I couldn't see, the fact that you have 2 years work experience is a plus, but it's also a negative, depending on where you look at it. A lot of some programs would want a little bit more work experience. And then also, I couldn't see any current extracurricular activities like volunteer experience. So that's the one thing that I didn't see that, going around. In terms of what to focus, I would say, first of all, you want to make sure that your resume displays all your accomplishments. Quantify as much as possible. So that should be very loud and clear of what you have accomplished to the reader. Look at this as your business card. This is the first 30 seconds that they're going to spend on your application. When they open your file, it's going to be your resume. So take a look at that first and make sure that what they see is something that they want to read more on later, So the application, once you get into the create your account and the password protected side of the application, that is going to ask you about your job responsibilities and your job description. So don't repeat that on the resume. Concentrate on what you have accomplished. And of course, because you got promoted, they should see that nice progression that you did in terms of managing teams, in terms of the size of project, the size of the budget you managed. Maybe you work with different departments. Maybe you did, when you said that you develop sales tools to support, what kind of, and how does that transfer into revenue and sales for the firm? So anything that you can quantify, do that. So if you talk about increasing revenue, by how much? If you talked about working with cross-functional teams, okay, how many people are we talking about? So all of those things, just think about the what, the who, the which, all of those things. That's what I'm going to be like. If I work with you, that's what I'm going to be asking you. So anyway, so I would definitely put more a quantifiable accomplishment to your resume. The one thing that they're going to be looking at is, because you have 2 years of experience, you want to let them know that you have grown and you progressed. So that's a great way of showing them. You don't want them to feel like you are weak on the work experience side, because which is not true. But if you don't have enough there, if you don't have quantifiable enough, they might think, oh, you know what? She might benefit from 1 more year of business school. You don't want them to think that. You want them to think that you're ready. So your resume is going to tell them that.
So Esmeralda,
your essays are going to.
Uh-huh. It's I have 5 years of work experience, actually, not 2 years. There might have been just some miscommunication there.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's right, because you did finish. Okay, I'm sorry. Then scratch that. That's
No
right. All right. Great. Okay. So then have your essays are going to be very, very important. And how you can articulate your previous experience, then why the MBA, and why the schools that you are applying to. You know, for instance, that they would be wondering, you know, now with 5 years, it's like, why can you not get that position without the MBA? Because you do have the work. So ideally here, you would tell them what, I wouldn't call it what you lack, because that would put you in a negative state, but what qualities you're looking for to strengthen with the learnings of an MBA. And that's what I would put that in. So the essays are going to be very important. Then I would say you're provided with your work, with everything that I see. Definitely NCR, I think, is a good choice, especially that you already speak French and English. That is very good. They're probably going to ask you to list a third language once you start there. I think is very good. Cambridge does like the work experience, the years of work experience, so that is good. They would be concerned a little bit on the GMAT side. They like to get those 700s, but because you have a 3.5, you should be fine. I would say if you demonstrate with your essay and your essays what you've done, etc. McGill, I think, is good. I would add actually HSC Paris, you know, also, and I would add McCombs, maybe, just because of a good safety school, because of their strength in marketing. And especially with marketing technology, with technology companies, I think that would be a good one. I would add that. But that's how, that's what I have. Do you have any questions?
Yes. So I was wondering, actually. So I was initially wondering between 2-year schools and 1-year schools, and given that Montreal has a lot of influence from Europe, I kind of focused a little bit in European schools, also given their 1-year program. But for technology, since the hub of the world, let's say, is in California, I was wondering if I should have a nice mix of universities from the state of California in addition to the ones that are listed here.
I thought about actually adding USC and UCLA, actually. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know, because I didn't see any California in there. So I didn't know if you wanted to do that, but USC and UCLA are really good. They're both very strong in technology. I said USC just because of the GMAT. Sometimes UCLA can be a little tricky, you know, but I would add both of them. Absolutely. And yes, I think that is good. And what my advice is to start working on those applications right away. That we have seen an increase in applications. All business schools are telling us they have received more applications this year than many years before, you know, and so it's hard to getting into. The way to really accomplish that is starting as soon as possible, so that you can apply to more schools and get, you know, hopefully multiple offers of admission.
Can I add a couple of things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I agree with everything Esmeralda said. I'd like to focus on one thing that I think would be tremendous if you could improve. And I know Esmeralda talked about your GMAT score. I'd like to focus on the quant a little bit. Of 42 on the quant. The 40 verbal is fine. It's the 42 quant that's low. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, unless you have a lot of A's in quant courses, I think it's gonna be a weakness. Okay. So I would encourage you to deal with that weakness in one way or the other. And one way is retaking and raising the quant score. That's probably the best way to deal with it. The other way would be to be taking some quant classes and getting A's in them, whether it's statistics for business, accounting 1, economics 1, prereqs, or actually calculus. Any of those things would help in that area. The best way, though, is simply to raise the score. The other thing is, given what your interests, I would encourage you to consider the Cornell Tech MBA program, which I think is a 1-year program. There's also NYU Stern's Tech MBA, which I think also is a 1-year program. But for those programs, particularly the NYU one, you do need a higher GMAT.
And also for Cornell Tech, it would be, there would be.
Okay. Fine. And yeah, there's another program, but again, I think you need a lot higher on the GMAT.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is the best. It would be the best thing if you could raise it. I know that there are some programs out there where you can get. I think Magoosh has like a 6-week course, that has been very well known to increase the GMAT in a fast pace. That could be something that you could definitely do. It would be a big difference if you can maybe get to 700, maybe getting that quant up. It would be really, really good. Yeah.
Perfect. So my last question was, especially given the high volume of applications that have come in this year, based on your background in admissions, how does one kind of stand out and align their values with that of the schools? Is there like one thing, if you could recommend, what would that be?
First of all, I would say, do your research well in terms of why you're choosing that particular program. Okay, so make sure that you don't just quote a course or specific, but that you really know why, the reasons for going to that program. That is going to come up really in the essays. Pretty much they all are going to ask you that. The second thing I think is trying to do a good job in terms of selling yourself and telling them what you have and how you plan to contribute to the program and how your goals are reasonable and attainable, especially in this economic environment. So when people that are completely switching gears to something completely different, that is more risky, especially now. I would say. So in your case, I think it's very good. It's very well because you can see the transition. It's good, and you're talking to really going to MBA feeder companies and all of that. But the idea is to tell them, what do you bring? How your past experience is going to be an asset for them. And then also how the MBA fits in. If you make it like that and you really sell them as you're going to be an easy to place candidate, somebody that could really walk into the MBA program and participate in the clubs and everything and take advantage, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But I think it is also the storyline as a whole. How do you, I would say the number one thing, maybe I would have even started with that. Stop thinking of what you think the MBA, the outcome wants to hear, and tell them who you really are. So don't think about the words or this is what I want to hear, then I'm going to position myself. Tell them who you are and what you want. And that being authentic, that is going to come up and they're going to like that.
I completely agree. The other thing I would add is, a lot of times there are going to be questions that are about your goals and your past and your leadership. And that's one kind of question. Then there might be a question like, tell us about a book you read that resonated with you, a book or music or a song or something like that. And there are other more getting to know you kinds of questions. And those are the ones where you really have to answer authentically. But most of those questions have a why, not just a what. And usually the why is far more important than the what. Right? The book that you choose to write about is going to be less important than why you choose to write about it, or the song, or the movie, or the whatever. Okay, so don't forget the why. And for the why, again, there's, I think, Esme's advice is just so important. Don't think about what you think they want to hear. Write about why you like that book, music, or whatever. Why does it resonate with you? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Esme. I'm going to go on and we're going to talk about Vikash right now. Now, Vikash, you sent a lot of information. I want to thank you because that makes this so much easier to do. Thank you to all of you, but some of you just happen to send more information. And again, you have very strong grades. You have a solid GMAT, very good GMAT. Congrats on the GMAT. I do have a couple of grades and some suggestions for you. A couple of questions, and also some suggestions that I think will really help your application. The first question is, you mentioned in your resume that you had a startup at what time and that you were raising money for it. Did it continue? Did you sell it? Did it fold, which happens to many startups? What was the story there?
So the story there was I got it off the ground. I got a lot of great feedback from my customers, but I had a hard time selling because it was an edtech platform, it was a social cause there. In terms of getting it into schools, schools wanted a lot more content than I had at that point. And I felt that I wouldn't be doing justice because the idea here was to help educate kids and teachers and not just make money out of it and sell. And I had to shelve the idea out to figure out a better way to reach my objectives. And that's kind of what happened there. I did get offers of having to actually sell my company to another edtech firm and me joining them, but I didn't think that I was staying true to why I started the company and which is why I said it doesn't make sense for me to kind of continue on that journey right now.
Okay. All right. So you have excellent grades in academics, strong work experience. In reviewing your resume and your LinkedIn profile, I thought you did a fairly good job of describing what you did and a fairly weak job in describing why I should care about what you did. There was too much focus on the what, and I'm hearing some background noise. Is anybody else hearing it? And not enough on the so what. Okay, not enough on why should they care, on your achievements, on what your actions contributed to your company, to sales, to reducing time to market, to saving money, whatever it was. That needs to be much, much, much stronger. And this I saw over and over again. There was also a profile of somebody who chose not to come, very geeky, very technical. That wasn't so much you, but you did focus much more on your tasks, your responsibilities, than the outcome and the results of your contribution. Okay? And schools are looking for people who can contribute. And a fundamental of admissions is past behavior predicts future behavior. So if you were a contributor in the past, if you had impact in the past, they're going to be more likely to believe that you're going to have impact and contribute in the future. Okay, both on campus and when you leave their campus. So you need to highlight your achievements and why they should care, especially about your most recent work at Zoom. Is it pronounced Zoom or Zoom? I'm not even sure. Zoom? Okay. What was the dollar impact of your responsibilities there? You don't have to tell me now and here, but if you're not comfortable revealing dollars, then reveal percentage impact. Okay.
So I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One question as a follow-up here. So a lot of the work that I've done is at startups, whether they're at early stage or kind of small companies. And so to just quantify and saying that this impact directly translated to something else there, because unfortunately with Zoom, they kind of had to pivot out of what we were doing to something else completely because of the pandemic and what they were doing. And so that kind of did shelve out a lot of the work that I did for them for the past year. So how do I put forward that point?
Well, some of it would be, were you working entirely on your own, or were you leading a team?
I was leading a team.
Okay, Esme, were you indicating you wanted to say something?
Couldn't hear very well the question. You go ahead, continue. Yeah.
Okay. So did you lead a team?
I did.
How many people?
4.
4. All right, that should be on here. I mean, again, I don't have a resume. I have what you described. All right, I'm assuming it's similar to your resume. Led a team of 4 people in pivoting from one product development project to another product development project. Prior development project was increasing sales by X% before COVID hit.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you hear the difference? All right. Led the on-time delivery of 3 different food trucks, including coordinating with engineers. How many engineers? Were they all in the same time zone? Were they on different continents? Innovative team, how many technicians, external vendors, how many? Managing cross dependencies along with identifying and remedying risk delivery. I'm not even sure I'd include that, but I would, responsible for delivering X hundreds of thousands of dollars in food in so many months. Okay, that's a much more concrete. Yeah, go ahead, Esme.
I was going to add, just think when you do resume and even and more importantly the essays, think about the impact. Sometimes less is more. If we pack the resume too much with too much information, they're not going to read it. So what you want to make it easy for them to read. So there's definitely a lot of information that you won't be able to tell them, and that is okay. As long as they have the impact and they can come away from the resume that you've done many great things, and now how you did each one of those things and all those details, you can let them go. Remember, as I said, the job description, you can have a lot of information you can put in the application boxes, and so a lot of those details can go there. But the resume, just make sure that the level of impact and the quantifiable accomplishments are there.
Right. Again, there was a 4th applicant who at one point expressed interest in doing this and decided against it. And I'm kind of sorry because that resume was an outstanding example of what you shouldn't do. Okay. What you wrote isn't as good an example of what you shouldn't do, but I think it's giving some fodder here. And I hope we're giving you suggestions for improvement because that's the goal here. I can't
absolutely. These are all valuable.
Okay. All right. Now let's go to actually your school choices because I'm also watching the clock. You wanted MIT, HBS, Stanford, LBS, and HEC Paris. I would say that HBS and Stanford are stretch programs. And that's based on what I see here because I don't see the so what. I'm not seeing the impact. I don't see a lot of leadership. You may have it, and that would change my opinion. But based on what I see here, that's the feedback I'm going to give. MIT Sloan, your chances are somewhat better, but it's still a hard program to get into. I would say London Business School would be more interested in you because you've been in the United States, you've been in India. Same with HEC Paris, and it's a little bit like the higher GMAT score. So your chances are better at those 2 schools. Now you wrote that your goals are social impact, business, or consulting. There's a lot of programs that could support that goal, and that I think would be probably would be more competitive than at MIT, HBS, and Stanford. Ross comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Darden, another really good option. I'll let Esme comment on Yale since that was in her background. Probably a little tougher along the, like the MIT in terms of being easy to get into. Esme, do you want to add anything? And then I think we need to.
Yeah, I was going to have Booth for you as another school that you could definitely, they would like all the content, all the stuff you've done. Talk is a great school to get into consulting. I was going to add Ross and Darden as well. And I would say Yale, you can apply knowing that it will be tougher. They get so many international applicants. So it is actually harder to get into Yale, but I would add it in. I would add it in usually what I would tell my clients is if you really think that you can add a really good commitment essay, if you really think you can answer the question really well without it going into so much technicality, for example, or all of that, then maybe you can do that. I would do that.
Right. Okay, so thank you very much, Vikash, and I'm going to move on to Isabel. Do you have, before we go on, do you have a test score, either actual or anticipated?
Yep, I have a GRE test score of 320.
320. Okay. Is it balanced? Do you have a breakdown?
Yes, it's balanced. Yep.
Okay. So it's about 160
160.
each. Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
fine.
correct.
All right, pretty balanced. All right, good. And you have a 3.47 GPA. Now, you wrote that you're looking for schools in the top 15 to 40 full-time MBA program. And I'm gonna pick on you here a little bit, okay? Because I want to make a point. That is a terrible way to pick a school by going by the rankings, okay? There are different rankings. They have different numbers. Even if you're going to say by U.S. News, terrible way to pick a school. What you need to look at is, first of all, what you want to do and which schools will help you do it. That's number one. And then where are you likely to get accepted? If you want to have two circles, one is going to be schools likely to want you, and the other one schools that you want to attend because it's going to help you achieve your goals. You want to apply to the programs. If you take these two circles where they intersect and they overlap, that's the sweet spot in terms of schools that you want to apply to. Okay? Does that make sense? Am I talking?
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So, you want to look at your goal, the employment reports at the school. Those are the ones that support your goals, the curriculum at the school, and the extracurricular strengths of the school, because that's going to determine which ones will actually get you from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow, okay, or post tomorrow after you get into business school and complete the program. Consider, in terms of your goals, I would suggest that you consider Duke Fuqua, Ross, NYU Stern, Georgetown, UCLA Anderson. I believe and the other thing I would suggest, and this we've suggested throughout the live presentation here today, is again, focus on impact when describing what you've done more than your title and responsibilities, okay? You want to show growth. And I would also suggest, given that you already have a master's in a related field, that you should be very prepared to answer, why do you need an MBA? Okay, because you have master's in information management and bachelor's in marketing. I think it's going to be a question that they're going to be really keen to have an answer to. If not in the application itself, then in an interview. Okay.
I have a question, Isabel. What the one thing what I see is what in my former admissions director hat is, okay, so somebody with a bachelor's in marketing and another master's did some work that looks, not seeing your resume, it looks like you have been working in something other than marketing, but now you want an MBA to go back to marketing. So that is something that I would be like, my question mark is, why didn't she get into marketing after her bachelor's? Because she did a bachelor's. Is that you changed your mind? Is that you decided that you didn't like what you were doing? So those are the questions that you would need to address to convince me, because you already have a bachelor's in marketing. Why do you want to get into MBA? So I would look, of course, the resume, maybe you're answering those questions in the resume, maybe already, but that's something that just from looking at the stats, that is what comes to mind that you need to be careful about. Okay.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful.
You're very welcome. Do you have any questions? If not, I think we'll go to the questions in the chat window. Isabel, any questions?
I think I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay. So let's see.
Did you see the questions? I don't see any questions.
They're in the comments. I do see them though. And I'll read them out loud, okay?
Okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
So we have from, I saw a really good one a minute ago. Okay. From Josh. Hello, my age and years of experience are more than the typical full-time applicant. However, through my research, a part-time online program will not help me achieve my goals. Any advice on how I approach the application process? So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I'm more than the typical full-time applicant. However, through my research, a part-time. We're talking about an executive MBA program. Have you looked into the Sloan Fellows programs at MIT, Stanford, London Business School, or USC's IBEAR program, Josh? Scroll down here.
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess they'll respond that. But I would suggest that you look into that, Josh. The Sloan Fellows Program at MIT Sloan, Stanford, London Business School, or USC's IBEAR. Gautam has a really good question, which is actually the one I wanted to ask. So whoever picked that up, thank you. Do we need to define what and why in the resume as well? You don't need to define why. The what is, if you provide the impact, the why is there, right?
Yeah.
Esme, you want to go on?
I would say, yeah, you think about sometimes yes, sometimes don't. If sometimes when we are providing too much of the why, then we're talking about 3-4 lines in a bullet point. You need to be careful with that. More than looking at that, I would say quantify your accomplishments. If you worked with a team, of how many? If you increase revenue, how much? If you any initiative you did, what did that result to? So I think that is the type of question that you need to be asking yourself. And then a lot of the essay questions are going to ask you about the why, and you'll be able to expand there a little bit more.
Exactly. Now, in the resume, the why should be intrinsic to why you're including it in the resume. Okay, because you only have most schools want a 1-page resume. So if you're trying to condense, yes, some say 2, but they, many is 1. Okay, so if you're including a bullet point, it has to be important.
Yeah.
And the important, let's say, reduce costs by X percent by doing ABC. Increase sales by 20% by innovating on, I don't know, whatever. Reduce time to market by Y percent as a result of a supply chain management innovation, but be more specific. I'm making things up as I go, obviously. But the why is intrinsic to the bullet point. And I hope that helps, Gautam. All right. Karen asked, to quantify the impact, can we tell them about the potential impact if we don't have the exact number at the time of the application?
I would say, let me answer that question. I would say absolutely. I have a client who just started her own company back in May. Of course, she doesn't have results, so I told her expected impact on that. So of course you're not going to say that on something that you've been working in 3 years. I mean, it is good for 1 or 2 bullets. When you are working on something, it should be in present tense. But if you add everything with potential impact, then you have to show something that you have done, to prove. But absolutely, if you see the potential impact of estimating impact, that's much better than just saying what you're working on and not providing anything else.
Okay, great. I'm not going to add to that. And Askveer asks, how to put adult ADHD in the right context in the application. It has severely affected my education and career.
I think I can answer that as well if you let me.
Sure, go ahead.
I worked with several severe ADHD clients in the past. I mean, I have one that comes to mind that just was admitted to every school he applied to. One of them were LBS and Columbia, for example, with even a low GPA. A lot of it is how you explain the situation to the outcome. You want to play, you don't want to, it is a fine line between telling them what happened, secondly, or how that has affected you without telling too much TMI, too much information. Just telling what they need to provide to make an admission decision, while not providing as an excuse or as a poor me kind of a situation. It's pretty much stating what it was, how that impacted, but also how you have been able to work through that. If you have some medication, for example, if you've been able to, and just tell, how you've been able to overcome those issues or work alongside those issues, and how you believe, with evidence, for example, of scores and other classes you've taken, etc., or your workplace, for example, of how you have been able to manage to work with that along the way, and how that should not affect your MBA performance. So if you let that clear, then there shouldn't be a way for them to deny you. I've had my clients, for example, have had shown like a 2.9 GPA or 2.8 GPA because maybe they had the first 1 or 2 years of in the graduate really tough for them, but then they saw help and education, they were able to improve, and then they maybe took other classes, maybe they worked with a tutor for the GMAT or the GRE, etc. But the ideal is to show progression, that you did something, you sought help, and now you believe you are, you should be fine. So I think that's
I just want to add to that. Obviously, I agree with everything that Esme said. You need to show that today you can perform, that you have the situation under control. It affected you previously, it affected your GPA, but today you are, it's in the past. You've got it under control. You can perform. That is absolutely key. I think you'll find that admissions committees are very forgiving if you show that the impact was in the past, not now. Okay. Another question from Bhargavi. I have a year's experience freelancing after 2 years experience at a FANG company as an SDE. I'm not quite sure what SDE stands for. Do you know, Esmeralda? Anybody else know? I also interned at the same. I'm just trying to Google it. I also interned at the same company for 1 year as a data engineer. Will this negatively affect my admission? Anybody want to tell us what an SDE is?
Software development engineer.
Engineer.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. All right. Thank you, Vikash. I don't think that the freelancing is going to negatively affect your admissions as long as, again, you can show impact. The trouble with freelancing is sometimes it's a fancy way of saying you were unemployed. But if you were employed, then you should have had impact and achievements and contribution. So that would be my concern. Okay.
Yeah. A good way sometimes to mitigate that, especially if those years, if that's the 2 most recent years, I don't know if that is providing maybe a letter of recommendation from a partner or a client or a big client, for example, that worked with you to kind of show evidence of the type of work you did and your performance. If the freelancing is like the most recent job you've had, that's a good way to do that.
Okay, great. All right, so Gautam has another question. Is it okay to go for an EMBA with just 8 years of experience? Well, you have 2 options there. Many, since the EMBA courts usually have 13 to 14 years of experience or more, it is, some schools tend a little bit younger, even in the EMBA programs, and some tend older. Obviously, I would avoid the ones that tend older and stick with the ones that tend younger, even in the executive MBA programs. You may also want to consider part-time MBA programs, which frequently will have people with 8 years of experience, and they are part-time.
Yeah, or they call them also evening and weekends. For example, I've had a number of clients admitted to the Berkeley evening and weekend MBA program, and they have that between 8 to 10 years of experience. It's a different niche, and I think we can definitely consider that. Okay.
And I think just to follow up with Josh, who asked about we'll get back to the application essays in a minute. He wrote, I'm just starting to look at those, meaning the Sloan Fellows. I've spoken with local part-time programs and found my work schedule wouldn't work. Well, the Sloan Fellows are full-time, immersive 1-year programs, but they are aimed at more experienced people. All right, so let's get back to this question. How to approach application essays without any size limit? Ooh, show judgment.
I would say, I think Linda has a very good phrase in her webinar. She said you don't want to throw in everything in the kitchen sink, right?
Right. That's right. I actually have a slide for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want to do.
I'm sorry?
That's what you don't want to do.
You don't want to do that, yeah. Because that is usually the temptation. Oh, I'm going to tell them everything. Just pour everything. No. You don't want to do that. I would say, you want to be able to, like with HBS, for example, pick a topic or pick 2 topics you want to talk about. If there is an open-ended question, you could do something like that. That is going to, but I would just try to be within, I mean, it is hard. I would say I would not send a 6-page essay, like for HBS, I would try to keep in line with about between 800 to maybe 1,200 words at the maximum. After that, if you have not been able to tell the reader within 1,200 words what you wanted to tell them, then there is really something wrong with you. That's what I think, because this is not a movie, it's not a novel, and that's what I think that is kind of, keep that in mind. Keep that the reader is reading so many other applications, you don't want to bore them. So sometimes you don't want to give unnecessary detail or go on a tangent or tell everything about your background. So that's what I would.
Okay. All right. I do want to, I'm just going to say that nobody wants to read the great American novel in an application essay. I love historical novels. This isn't the place for them. Tell one story, tell it well, and don't take any longer than necessary to tell it. In terms of closing remarks, because we're going to have to bring this to a close. Esme, do you have any concluding remarks that you want to share?
I would say start now. Start your process now. Don't wait. If you know you want to do the MBA, then there is no reason to keep waiting. Start working on those essays and know that, and just I wish you the best of luck.
Okay, so I have two things I want to mention. One, I think you see that Esmeralda Cardenal can add an enormous amount to your application effort. So if you would like to work with her, you can go to accepted.com/service dash, well, forget it. Google accepted.com Esmeralda Cardenal, and you'll go right to her page and you can request her. I also want to tell you that we have, many of you are wondering, obviously the point here is, are you competitive? Are you qualified? We have a quiz, it's free, that you can take, and you'll receive an assessment of your chances as well as tips for improvement. It's at accepted.com/MBA quiz. One word, just accepted.com/MBA quiz, QUIZ. That's about it. Okay. So
Bye,
thank you very
everybody.
much for coming. We have a lot of thank yous coming in. It's been a pleasure. Thank you to Esmeralda, and thank you to the GMAT Club.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're
for
very
your help.
welcome.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.